constantly communicating with everybody is really important. No, they don't have to like you, like it's fine. You're not trying to be everybody's best friend. That's fine. But do they understand what the marketing strategy is and how it ties back to the business? So therefore, do they understand that's important, like the importance of that connection? Do they have the data that backs up your strategy? And, do they actually understand kind of what activity you're doing and some of the reason why?
That was Emma and Ruta, and this is Social 3.0, the podcast dedicated to helping B2Bs grow through content and communities. In this episode, I sit down with Ruta and Emma, both of whom are marketing consultants and come with a wealth of knowledge and perspectives on B2B marketing. We talk about the state of B2B right now, some of the challenging economics around where we are in the cycle right now, and also we talk about some of the practical tactics that we can apply that even in a budget constrained environment, we can still use to yield success. I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did filming it. All right. Emma, Ruta, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I get a feeling that this is going to be quite a fun episode, given what we've just been speaking about already. So why don't we introduce you to the audience here? So Emma, do you want to kick off with a bit of background intro, and then Ruta, and then we'll get into it.
Awesome. So hi, everyone. I'm Emma Davies, co-host of Blame It On Marketing, which we'll probably talk about later, no doubt. I am a freelance marketing consultant, and I have a little group of freelance marketers who act as an outsourced kind of in-house marketing team called Advocatude. And I have worked as both an in-house marketer and, like I said, as a consultant for many years now. So incredibly tortured and looking forward to talking about all things B2B.
Love it.
Love that. I'm Ruta, the other co-host of Blame It On Marketing. I'm a generalist marketer. I'm also a fractional CMO, so much like Emma, consulting with different B2B businesses, and we've got some things to say about that. I also am building a marketing metrics platform called Lava Metrics. So if you're always disappointed by your reporting needs in a spreadsheet, you might enjoy it.
Spoken like a true startup founder. Get the plug in right off the bat. Get going.
No. I had loads of good stuff to say, and I was like, I do marketing.
I'm here for it. Right. Well, let's get straight into business and let's focus on B2B then. So give me your perspective, and your perspectives might vary. So choose whoever wants to answer this first. What's like the state of B2B as you see it right now, B2B marketing specifically?
Emma, you go.
I feel like we're probably going to say similar things. I think it's a big mess.
Go on.
I feel like, it depends what type of B2B you're in, but if you're in B2B SaaS in particular, I think the competitor landscape is so packed. It's so jam-packed with people. And, if you're in the UK, the economy is kind of in the toilet still. We're waiting for the budget in October. Don't know when this episode's going to air. Might be all good news. But, I think as a result, a lot of businesses are being super cautious about spend. Budget's been cut. People expect the same ROI. Struggling. There's people, marketers are struggling to deliver. People aren't recruiting marketers. I think when you look across the board, I feel like that gives me the like, oh God, this is not good right now. I don't know if I'm being too doom and gloom, Ruta.
No, I think if you're in a business that's doing well and it's a good time, then it's a good time, right? But I feel like a lot of B2B SaaS businesses aren't having as much demand right now because the economy is struggling a little, so everyone's spending less, and that's just what happens. So you have to kind of fight for attention even more, and we're even seeing big players like HubSpot do lots of display advertisements and airports and things like that, which is like really unheard of up until very recently, right? Especially in the UK. Maybe in the US it's a bit different, but in the UK, so you're seeing the signs of even like the big guys are like, okay, what should we do to get some more eyeballs on our stuff? But it's HubSpot and they have loads of cash, right? I think. I haven't looked at their financial statements in a while.
They must do, because they're doing bloody Amazon TV ads.
True. Well, there you go, right? Like that's unusual for B2B SaaS. So that for me is like a symptom of, okay, something is happening with demand, something is happening with how much people want to buy this stuff. And then in terms of marketers, the hiring market in the UK is pretty damn rubbish right now, in terms of salaries and in terms of the unicorns that people expect. And it's all kind of, I think, a symptom of that risk averseness and being scared to invest in something because, you know, a marketer can do their best job. But if there's just no demand and money to be spent on your product right now, doesn't matter how good of a job they do, no one's going to spend their money.
After painting that slightly gloomy picture, Emma and Ruta, like, do we think that we're in another part of that marketing cycle again, whereby like the economic situation falls a little bit, then marketing's seen as a discretional spend, marketing spend gets cut? You know, are we feeling that B2Bs haven't learned since, you know, this cycle happens continually?
We've done it already.
Yeah.
So are you feeling exactly the same from other downturns? That's mad.
Yeah. You know what's weird about this one?
Though? And anything different? Yeah, go for it, Ruta.
What's weird about this one is that we can all feel it, but the economy looks like it's like the economy is not good, but it ain't. We're not in an official recession, right? So it's almost this like gaslighting moment of like we can feel things are slowing down, and it's been like that for like 2 years now, right? Like it's not even a recent thing, but the economy is like kind of okay, and like the stock market is kind of okay. So it's just like, where is this coming from? And I like the point that you made where maybe we almost spiral ourselves into it of like panic, spend less, cut, and then it's like, okay, if we're all cutting, that means the B2B stuff that we buy from each other is going to be cut too. So the positive is, let's all just spend more money, and then we're all going to spin ourselves back into business.
So, like, because it's quite counter to the example that you gave, right, of HubSpot, where, you know, they're starting to take much more of a B2C play. We've definitely seen that with some more forward-thinking B2Bs, where it's like, you know, out of home, it's starting to look like the consumerization of B2B. So they're clearly spending. So yes, they've got, you know, they're well funded, yada yada. They're not typical of. I wish we all had that firepower. But clearly they're seeing a different way to capture demand. They're not kind of battening down the hatches. So any perspectives on that?
I think we know, like we said, from previous downturns that it is a mistake to stop marketing, and it's a mistake. I feel like companies like HubSpot, because they have got that ability to kind of double down, that's what they're doing. And they're trying new channels. And I think we know, and we all know this, and we've known this for a really long time, as much as like people in B2B want to hide from it, the way that people buy now is very, very different. So I feel like there probably is a bit more of a consumer approach required in order to consistently be in someone's face, right? We know that's basically the challenge that we're all facing, is that you've got to be front and center, front of mind, consistently all the time, because we're all bombarded even more so than we were even maybe like 6 to 9 months ago with stuff. And so if they don't take that approach, they are going to lose out. And I feel like, you know, where you have got a company that does put marketing first, and I think HubSpot and some of those other, you know, some of those other startups even have that kind of attitude. Those are the ones who are going to win in the long run. You know, the people who are pulling the plug, who are like, do more with less, those are the people who are going to struggle in the long run. And it's just whether you've got the financial runway to keep investing in marketing, which I imagine quite a lot of startups don't, or whether you're prepared to kind of put your neck on the line for marketing again, which I feel like lots of founders and lots of boards actually, in fact, actually lots of this problem probably stems from those guys. You know, that's where the real challenge lies, right? It's like, can you actually stick it out?
Also, consolidation is a very normal part of an economic downturn, right? The people that have the money will spend it and will do well out of a downturn, and the people that don't have money, they'll close down. So like a SaaS consolidation has been needed for a while now. It's been wild out there. So I'm not surprised that, you know, the big players can go and splash cash and acquire more customers. And then the people that aren't quite there, don't have the cash, and are struggling and having to cut down. It's unfortunately a very natural part of that cycle.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. So outside of spending power, which isn't always in everyone's control, right? So outside of that, what do you think separates the people that are doing B2B marketing well versus those that are not? You might want to call on some of your own experience for this one.
Go on.
You can go. I'm trying to come up with a nice story in my head.
I think the people who are utilizing channels that don't cost and trying to I guess almost, I mean, some people would say, oh, is it community building, is it advocacy building, what are they trying to achieve through their channels that don't cost money? By that I mean things like social. Big plug for the social channels now. But organic social is one of those ways that you can deliver, working with influencers, working with thought leaders in those spaces. I feel like those things have become more important. And the people that are doing well are the people who are doing that stuff. That's what we're seeing. So, I think some really good examples are some of the organizations that like Chili Piper, for example. I mean, I know, again, they've got the firepower, they've got the spend power behind them, but they didn't, if you want to flick back a few years ago when they were first starting out, but they cottoned onto this stuff really, really quickly. And that's what they did. I think there are some other examples like lavender.ai, who were kind of working with a lot of marketing influencers. Originally, they hired loads of guys in. They've done really well. Like, they're a name that people now recognize and talk about, regularly if you work in the marketing space. So I think people who are utilizing those sorts of channels are being quite clever and thrifty almost are the ones that are doing well. And they're also not afraid to push the boundaries, right? They're not being, your usual B2B boring, talking about what the CEO wants to say. They're also, really trying to tap into how their ICP feels right now. And I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, and I think off the back of that, so social is a big part of a lot of people in B2B, right? I'm not just talking about LinkedIn, I'm talking about all the other socials. We're all on social media to some extent. But part of that to me is like that changed buying cycle and the buying experience that people want. So I think the brands that are doing well are optimizing their buyer experience to what their buyers want, not what their salespeople want. We spoke about this in another episode. They're not putting in extra fields. Like a really simple example, they're not putting in 12 fields in their form because, as a salesperson, I want to know basically how much I can bill for before they even talk to me. They're making it as simple as possible to get that first conversation going if there needs to be a conversation. And if not, you just check out on the website, that kind of thing. So just they're being really mindful. And I think Chili Piper, HubSpot, Lavender, all of those like new, I wouldn't put HubSpot in this area, but you can check out on the website with the credit card. All of the newer kind of self-service tech is doing that really, really, really well. And they seem to be doing well, like Slack as well. Notion's just had like a huge breakthrough in user numbers, like, all of those things. Obviously I'm super focused on tech and B2B, but there's other examples of brands doing that as well.
Super interesting. I wasn't aware of lavender.ai's go-to-market strategy. So that's very interesting. So you mentioned, Emma, that they hired influencers.
Yeah. So there was, back in the day of Twitter, I think there was, I don't know if you remember this, but there was marketing Twitter, and a lot of those people then sort of transitioned across to LinkedIn and sort of bought their following with them. And then you kind of saw Lavender snap up those people. So they hired people like Will Aitken, Chelsea Castle, who used to work at Chili Piper, who had these really big followings on Twitter, and then, like I say, brought them across to LinkedIn to come in and be like head of content or head of, all of those sorts of things. And, as a result, those people have naturally kind of parted ways with the business, it looks like, or at least some of them have, because they've obviously built their own following. Naturally, they can go off and they can, earn a good, decent amount of money just being an influencer themselves. But, that was a clever strategy in the first instance. Nobody else had done that. Nobody else had gone, oh, these people know how to talk the talk. They're obviously really good marketers, and I can hire them to do our stuff and promote us.
And when Emma's saying they hired a bunch of influencers, literally when you went onto the Lavender AI's people page, every single person had at least 10,000 followers. And actual content followers, not connections. So yeah, it was their entire staff that was doing that, and it worked phenomenally well, right? They kind of exploded out of nowhere. Of course, that's not true. no one explodes out of nowhere, but it was a really clever tactic. And it was early on. It was like, what, 2 years ago?
2 years ago, yeah.
That they did this. So I feel like they were kind of ahead of their time in that sense.
100%. That's super interesting. I have no idea. I feel slightly embarrassed how I completely missed this, because this is like everything I advocate for. Oh dear. I should probably give up hosting a B2B social podcast.
No.
Never mind. But like that is such an important like mentality, I think, for how to grow a business, because you're seeing this in B2C, all right? So you're seeing that celebrities hired as chief creative officers, etc., and that like professionalization of creators is such a thing now. Fascinating. Really pleased you brought that up. Ruta, felt like you were going to say something there.
No.
Oh,
just
cool.
drinking my coffee.
Oh, fine. Important stuff. So, so outside of that, then, like, what do you think? Because Ruta, you've mentioned this a couple of times, where you've pivoted towards like self-service and the way that you've explained how people are doing it well. Where do you feel like, especially in like B2B, whether it's SaaS or anywhere else, like where do you think sales plays an important role alongside marketing, and the kind of future of the sales and marketing dynamic?
Are you trying to get me in trouble?
I used to be in sales. That's where I started my career. Yeah. So I've seen this from both sides. So I'm always interested in this discussion.
So I think sales is still definitely an important part of any business that's B2B focused, and I think their role, so one, there's complex sales, right? If it's a complex product with complex options, blah, blah, you will never get away with it without sales. Whatever. You guys are safe, all good, keep doing the thing you're doing. You probably have solutions people as well, like, the whole shebang. I think if I'm taking an example of like a Slack, and I don't know if this is what they actually do and how they set up, so please don't take this as truth. I think what the sales departments in those companies are, or should be, at least in my head, is one, being super on top of that buying cycle. So how are the buyers wanting to purchase things, and being almost like the voice for those concerns. I also think they definitely have a role to play in the enterprise side of things. So again, a bit more complex, a bit more longer sales cycle type stuff. And also it then comes back to kind of having that alignment with marketing. So yes, you will still need salespeople and salespeople skills, because marketers are not salespeople and salespeople are not marketers. So there will still be a place, but I think then you have to look at having like a revenue team where there is sales and marketing people working together, and sales will input on information. They will analyze things. They will go out to the market and try new messaging and try to connect with people and figure all of those things out. So I think those skills are still super important. But yeah, in a self-service world, it's a little bit different, I guess. And in a self-service world, I guess you could use salespeople as account managers for upsells and cross-sells and all of those things. So it's a bit different, but all of those skills are still, I think, crucial to any company looking to grow, especially if you're looking to grow from within your customer revenue pot. You're still going to have salespeople.
Emma, any other thoughts on top of that? And I think like any guidance, because I imagine you've probably been in situations, I won't ask you to name them because they're probably your clients, etc. So like situations where the relationship between sales and marketing sometimes isn't optimal, it's fair to say, even though it should be, but goals sometimes are misaligned. So any like suggestions and advice for those that really want to have a well-functioning marketing sales engine? Because yeah, you're absolutely right, Ruta. There's always going to be a place. It's just figuring out like how to make sure everyone's pulling in the same direction, etc. So any perspective on that?
I think just to add quickly to what Ruta was saying, I feel like the salespeople who will kind of survive maybe some of the self-serve stuff are the people who actually understand the importance of relationship building with clients, and not just clients, but internally as well. So the people who are really focused on how can I genuinely support these people and, help them with the right solution. Those are the people who will survive. I think we will lose the people who feel like you're swimming in shark infested waters with. There there may always be a place for those people, but I feel like that's, the pool is getting smaller and smaller.
Estate agents, they'll just become estate agents.
You just have to become a recruiter or an estate agent. Okay? You have to go and do that. You can't work in tech sales anymore, okay? And I think, like you said it there, Andy, I think one of the things that obviously goes wrong so often is, sales and marketing not having aligned goals. And also, like our podcast says, pointing the finger at each other when stuff's not working, rather than sitting down and actually taking time to work this out together and work as that kind of revenue generating team. That's where it all goes wrong. And quite often it is really as simple as people who won't speak to each other properly, or they see that their side of the argument is more important than the other side, and they don't want to listen to the data and the facts and all of those sorts of things. And especially in an economic downturn, it's like people don't fire salespeople, they fire marketers, which I think is always crazy. And we've had many people on this podcast who've hands up said that was a mistake. We can always get more salespeople. Can you really hire back in good marketers? Gets tricky.
You can, but also takes time. And then if you stop doing marketing, it'll take however long to revamp, right? So it's not even just the person, individual cost.
The marketing suffers itself. Yeah. So I think, again, if I was a marketer and I was having a really tough time with a sales leader, I think one of the things that we always advocate for is sitting down and having a really honest conversation with that person, figuring out why there are sticking points, trying to figure out how you can align your goals better, how can you actually work together. It's a bit of trial and error. I think on the marketing side, we have to kind of be the people to wave the white flag quite often and say, like, let's sit down and have this conversation, which is really frustrating that it's always kind of on our side, but do be the person to do it. I think that's what I would say, and try and figure out where the challenges are, how can you better align yourselves, how can you get sales input into what you're doing. And if people on the sales side start to feel like they've been listened to, they will equally want to input into the next thing you do.
Yeah. And also, if you're a CEO or a founder who isn't concerned with how well your sales and marketing team are working together, then you're missing one of your main functions as a CEO or founder. And please don't be also that person who thinks it's enough to be like, oh, are you working with blah, blah? Okay. That's not how fostering a relationship works. You need to actually put them on the same place, be in the same room as them, get them to collaborate together if that's not happened before. So yeah, I think if you're a CEO who's not doing that, you're definitely not fulfilling your duties fully. Not to call anyone out, but to call everyone out.
Sound advice. So I think a lot of what we've spoken about over the last 30 minutes or so the negative side of it has all been rooted in short-termism, right? Whether it's like firing marketers and hiring salespeople in a downturn, short-termism has typically been rife in B2B, and we obviously know why. We know the long and short of it. We know like 95-5 rule. We know all this stuff. But like, what do you think it's going to take to change mindsets here?
Honestly, I feel like the more marketers are getting into either CEO or, founder roles, people starting their own businesses that have a marketing background, or marketers who are becoming CROs. I honestly feel like that is the shift that we need. We've already started to see it happening. But I feel like that is the real thing that will move us on. People will be like, oh, actually, no, this is really important. This is how you handle this stuff. And until more people get into those roles, it is going to be hard. We're still going to be fighting the good fight, I think, for quite a while.
I think the other thing which is happening is push for profit, which can affect both. It can go both ways, right? So it could mean firing marketing so that your bottom line is better, or it can mean that your marketing focus is then on increasing that profit. So you're looking at not just gaining new customers, but at what cost, how long are they staying for, how long are customers renewing for, all of those things, impacting those things. So I think that's an interesting one. The slight caveat there is B2B SaaS is typically funded by VCs that want exits, which doesn't encourage good behavior and long-term thinking. But if there is a realignment and a what's the word I'm looking for that I said earlier? Reconsolidation, I think a lot of companies will have to move to being sustainable in terms of finances and not just getting more and more funding rounds. So I think that can also push in the right direction in terms of thinking about more long term, and thinking about, how, those questions of like, what can we do in the next 6 weeks to really make a big dent? And it's like, we would have done it already. Like, that's just, why are you asking that? So I think those things can help, but they can also create a lot of pain, which I'm totally aware of.
Yeah, I think I really like what you're saying, because whilst I think this is a healthy part of the economic cycle, given like 2021 valuations were insane, obviously, and we just saw so much money wasted in what people perceive as marketing, which is just throwing money at Google ads, right?
Yeah.
And then just pretending you don't see the cost to acquire a customer. I just refuse to call it CAC, but like, so when you look at that, you don't look at your lifetime values, and it's all out of whack. But you're just like, we'll ignore it because top of funnel.
Anything for
anything
for acquisition.
So it's nice, kind of nice in a way that we're back into a more sensible part of the economic cycle, rooting to your point about like pushing for profitability. So that's good. What's not good though is like, marketing, not promotion, is a long-term game, which is very hard to prove the profitability of. So on that point though, because Emma, I think you made a really good point about the fact that like more marketers getting into senior roles, whether CRO, whether CMO or CEO, can change mindsets here. But like, what advice would you have for people that are kind of mid-level marketers right now, marketing director, thinking how can I get my plight taken seriously? Any advice you would share here?
We probably both have a bit, don't we? But I think one of the things we always, and it sounds crazy to still be saying this out loud, but, make sure you've got your data in check. Make sure you are reporting the stuff that people care about, and when I say that, not just anything vanity wise, but, like, can you actually tie back what you're doing to how it impacts, revenue and also profit if you can. And make sure you report that consistency, not just like we were saying, we did this talk the other day, but not just like at a regular interval, but like that the reports are the same, that the data that you show back so people can see things like, are there any trends? Are there any black holes coming up? Those sorts of things, because then you become a very useful member of that like senior leadership team. If you're not in the senior leadership team, obviously that's more difficult, but those are the things that you can be going to your CEO or whoever it is that you report into and saying like, okay, here's the data. This is what this is telling me. You've got the information. I'd obviously like to be part of this conversation so that I can help you to understand it better. I think that's a really critical one. We've already talked about relationships, making sure that you are just constantly communicating with everybody is really important. No, they don't have to like you, like it's fine. You're not trying to be everybody's best friend. That's fine. But do they understand what the marketing strategy is and how it ties back to the business? So therefore, do they understand that's important, like the importance of that connection? Do they have the data that backs up your strategy? And, do they actually understand kind of what activity you're doing and some of the reason why? And if you can do those things, for me, those are like the most important things. Ruta, you've probably got stuff to add.
Kind of everything that Emma said with a slight emphasis on. So when we say know your numbers and have good data, it's about also understanding the financial position that your company is in. If you don't understand the finances of it, if you don't know what revenue versus profit versus net versus gross versus cost of sales or overheads, like get those basic financial terms really well understood, and then understand how what you do in marketing relates to those. So if you're spending X amount of money on getting new customers, but it turns out that they don't actually make a profit in the end because they don't renew or whatever it is, like be super clear about that, and actually bringing those insights then to senior leadership is going to make you a superstar. So understand that financial side of things. And I know for some marketers, that's going to be like just the worst, most boring shit ever, but it's going to be your superpower.
I think it's such realistic and practical advice that, yeah, probably doesn't sound fun to the creative thinkers that might be listening to this. But yeah, there'll be no point being here 10 years later talking about, oh, marketing's not being taken seriously. Unfortunately, we're going to have to do the legwork, aren't we? Really? So yeah, that makes sense. So let's kind of pivot a bit to some of these kind of cost-effective tactics as well. You already called out social a little bit, and thrown in some examples already for good measure. Are there any other business that you'd pick out that are doing social well in B2B?
So there's one trend going on in social and businesses, and it's that kind of deformalization of social. So acting more like a human being, that a person would post something rather than a brand posting something. And I think it's been really, really impactful, but I also think it is a bit of a trend. So that's an interesting one to look at, because most of the companies that we do think are doing well are doing exactly that. So I'm trying to think of examples of companies that are not doing that, but are still doing well, if that makes sense.
You got HubSpot in your mind as you're thinking about that. Like if you look
at Chili Piper, Monzo, those people are very much like in the zeitgeist of what's happening. So there is, I'm just double checking their LinkedIn to make sure that I'm not chatting shit and they've completely changed their strategy. There is a company called Byword who are an AI article writer. We're not going to get into whether that's a good or a bad thing, but a lot of their content is actually showing how they scale SEO in the most useful way. And obviously they plug their product because that's what their product do. That's what their product do. That's what their product does. Bloody hell. That's what their product does. But it's super useful stuff. And it's kind of like case studies, but on crack. So it's like case studies with examples, with instructions. And I absolutely love their posts. I look at them all the time because they're really insightful. So I think that's maybe a good example of a company that's kind of not doing the whole personification of their social media, but that's still being really useful and really engaging just through a different means.
Interesting. So like leaning heavily on the educational side of content creation. Love that.
Yeah.
Emma, any other thoughts?
You were talking about HR.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a good example without upsetting any of my clients about the content that they create. But I do think, so a lot of this is obviously dependent on your ICP. So like for marketers, obviously we do lean into the comedy and the funny side of our job because we all kind of understand each other's pain. So when companies like the ones we've already mentioned are doing things like being super personal and being silly and all that kind of stuff, we love it because it's kind of where maybe we're just like a personality type, I don't know. But like when you have different audience, like when people are selling to, I don't know, like CEOs, those sorts of things, you do notice that their social media posts are more serious and straight-laced and those sorts of things and have this more professional edge to them. I'm trying to think of an example of where I've seen someone do that and it's still been quite good. But I think actually if you look at some of the VCs, like they still post, they still have a bit of personality, but they know their audience, so they know that there has to be that human edge without taking it too far down the Monzo route, which is basically just taking the piss out of everything. And I think it is that. I think if you do understand your audience, what your audience is looking for, still like that is that consumer bit that we're all adding into what we do, which is we've kind of all of a sudden woken up and realized that the people that we sell to are human beings. And I think, that's our principle when it comes to marketing, isn't it, Ruta? It's like, how can we be useful and helpful, whoever the audience is? So whatever challenges.
I think that's the key word, right? Useful. So your content has to serve a use, whether it's entertainment, whether it's education, whether it's whatever else. As long as it serves a use that's relevant to your audience, you're going to do okay. If you're just posting for the sake of posting, probably not. If you're mismatching your audience tone, you're probably going to have a harder time. But if it is useful and you're still mismatching your audience tone, you'll still probably have quite a few people engaging in your post because what's underneath it is still what they want to read and look at.
Mhm.
So I'm interested then, with like both how you view social, because and the role that it plays, given that you advise marketing at a top level in your kind of respective businesses that you consult with, and you've already called it out without me prompting you and shown some really good examples of it. But like, I think generally in most B2B, social is, for me personally, feels like it's underrepresented. It feels like it's undervalued, to be honest. Um, and it just feels like more of like, oh, it's fun. Let the social media manager have a bit of fun and post some.
A thing on the side.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it doesn't really
Yeah.
impact the things that you were talking about, Emma, which is like the actual language of the business, the growth metrics, yada yada. Maybe that's right. Maybe it's wrong. I don't know. But yeah, give me your honest perspective on it.
So depends on your audience, right? If you can't, all audiences are in general on social, but if you can't necessarily catch them, you're going to have a hard time. Again, we deal with LinkedIn a lot because we're in B2B business and everyone's on LinkedIn. So if you know that your audience is on LinkedIn, do something with them. It's a silly thing not to go to your audience that are already there and they are there. Like, it's hard to catch your audience, so why would you not be using that as a channel, right? But the thing that I found has worked really well in organizations that are maybe not valuing organic social as much is actually instead using LinkedIn as more of a one-to-one uh, sales and marketing approach. So getting CEOs and founders to connect with people or using automation software to do it, and getting those conversations started and having someone monitor them. Because when you actually have a conversation started, if you're a founder that, for example, doesn't give a shit about social, and you see that your ICP is responding to something that you said and starting a conversation about a topic that is obviously beneficial to you, it's like, whoa, okay. And you can do that quite quickly. And then you can get yourself into a good organic social place because you've kind of proven that value very quickly, but you've surpassed the bit of where you're shouting into the void and hoping people come to you. So that's a big learning for me, is do that one-to-one bit, and you can actually get people on board quite quickly onto doing the then one-to-many in the more organic posting side of things.
Solid.
On a flip side, it's not a dig at social media managers, but it's a dig at marketing in general. Is, your social channels are not a place to just regurgitate the same thing that's on your website over and over again. And I think that's a mistake. That's something that we see time and time again. It's like, if you're going to invest in social, what people want to see is that the content that is on your social media channel is right for the audience, and that is right for the channel, and that it is exclusive. So when I go to your LinkedIn, it's not the same as what I see on your Instagram or whatever else, and that is a mistake that people make. They're like, oh, we'll just post the same thing across all the channels. That's probably not good enough anymore. And again, that is why people tend to go down this, especially senior people, go down this rabbit hole of like, oh, social media is really easy because all you do is repost the blog. We don't need you to do that. That's a 5-second job. But if you're creating exclusive content and you can show some of those numbers, and you can even show it, but even if you don't have some of the sophisticated software we're talking about, but you can tie it back to like, this is how much website traffic this drove, which you can very easily do.
Yeah.
Easy. You've kind of got the green shoots of like showcasing that this is worth investing in, but you have to put in the upfront effort of creating content that is worth people engaging with on social. Like Ruta says, otherwise it feels like you're screaming into the void. The other thing that lots of people don't do, which I find really crazy to this day, is they don't spend a lot of time actually engaging on social with people. It's like, you can't just post stuff and expect follower numbers or comments, and it's like, I mean, I know I'm teaching people probably listening to this to suck eggs, but like 50% of your time should be content, 50% of your time should be engaging with people, which again is hard to do as a marketer, but find the time, it's worth doing. It gets you traction.
Do not fucking AI content. Just don't. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. It's not good enough. It's stupid. Don't do it.
Yeah. And then I think I'm trying to think what the final thing I was going to say about, like, oh my God, it's gone from my brain now.
Can I jump in?
Go on.
Yeah. There's one alternative use for social as well, which I think you can get buy-in for quite easily, and that's testing. So if you're wondering about what next campaign to produce, or if this messaging is working well or whatever, you can spend quite a small amount of money, maybe not on LinkedIn, but on other platforms, to test an audience, to check which is a preference of something, or if something catches on versus it doesn't. So if you want to have a little bit of extra insurance on your marketing campaigns, do a couple of tests to start with, and then you can build out something that's worth spending time on and that you will have a much better chance of getting ROI out of. Sorry, words are not coming out. Than if you just blind go into it and it's like, oh, this is our campaign. So I think maybe, yeah, using it for testing is a different way of going about using social media, but it's very useful. And me and Emma do it all the time.
I've remembered my point now, which is to do with demand gen. So many people, we don't want to have that debate. We're not going to go there. But like, if you want to do demand gen properly and you're not using social media, I'm not sure that you're doing it. So like, that you need to have, we all know the principles, right? It's like your own audience, borrowed audiences, and communities. So if you're not doing that stuff, you're not really doing demand. So you kind of have to be on social in order to be able to generate demand, right? Because where your audience are, whatever channel that might be. So yeah, that was my final point. If you want to do that properly, you got to get all over it.
Love it. So let's pivot it to our final topic, and let's talk about the podcast. So blame it on marketing. Of course, I love your little avatar or logo that you use for it. Perfectly depicts everything that's wrong with marketing. Just those 3 pointed fingers to that little guy sat there. So talk me through like both why you created it, and two, like what are you hoping to get from it? Because I think this links quite nicely back to everything we were just talking about: social, personal brands, creator led, yada yada. So talk me through the journey. What's the next steps? What's the objectives?
Should I talk about how we started it? So sorry if you heard the story already. Emma and I used to work in-house, and then we both started being consultants. And with being consultants, you meet and talk to a lot of people, and you hear lots of crazy shit that happens in marketing. So we would just voice note each other, like 5-minute long voice notes about the latest thing that has come up in our lives. And eventually we're like, okay, we just kind of need to talk about this. And because we were consultants, it meant we kind of could, because we weren't, no one's going to assume we're bashing on our own in-house company when we're doing this. So we literally, it all happened in like a month, right? We sat down, we're like, let's name it something. Let's invite a bunch of our friends. Like, that's our first couple of seasons. It's all our marketing friends. And let's talk about a bunch of topics. And we're here 64 episodes later, 2 years later. So it's been really great.
Yeah. And we very quickly, so the podcast started coming out, and we started getting these messages from people being like, oh my God, this is so refreshing. You're not pretending it's all fine. And I know we've had, people come back to us and say, you're not worried about portraying yourself as a pair of idiots, and the fact that you're really negative all the time. I'm like, if you actually listen to us, we're not that negative. But sometimes it's okay to say the job's hard and admit that, and not be on LinkedIn pretending it's all fine. And so we started the community. So it's a free community. And we wanted to do that really early on, because it's a place where we can obviously house the content, but we can also actually talk to people, kind of like almost off the record, without worrying that your boss is looking, or that you've joined a Facebook group and someone else who is in the Facebook group and they've screenshotted what I've literally seen people do this, by the way. So this is why I'm the Facebook groups. They're not safe places, and so that's what we wanted to try and do, is to try and create a bit of a place, and also to allow people to vent about the job, because our job is hard. We are expected to do an awful lot. And that does just that, that burnout, that grind that marketers feel is really real. And then we all get fired and blamed. So yeah. Yay. So that's why we did it. And I think from our point of view, like, okay, yeah, there's no denying that Ruta and I have gained a few extra followers as a result of what we've done. But I think that is probably because people appreciate our honesty rather than they think we're the best marketers in the world. You know, we're not trying to pitch ourselves.
And some people are totally not into what we do as well. Like we went to an event and we went to talk to some marketers on other stands and they were like, whoa, no, like I don't want to talk to you kind of thing. So like it's not a universal thing. It's definitely if you get it, you get it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess the end goal for us is to do this as much as we can and hopefully make money, in a sense. Like we want to work on this all the time, so if we could make some money, that means we could work on it more, and just do more of that, because it's Emma and I, even though we're consultants and we're like senior consultants, we love doing marketing. That's what makes us really happy. So this is where we do marketing, is flame mail marketing. It's our own thing that we can do. Yeah,
we get to do the real marketing, and it's good for us, because in all honesty, it's the place as well where we have tried loads of stuff that then we've taken back to our clients that have worked. Where we can go hand on heart, we've seen this work because we've tried it out ourselves, and with very little money, you know, push behind it as well. Like we've tested a lot of stuff. So it gets us, it means we get to do the bit of our job that we really like, creating pretty pictures on Canva.
Yeah. We're getting tattoos.
Love it. I love it. And also you're managing to prove that you can grow a LinkedIn page at the same time, where most people said LinkedIn pages are dead. So
we say it goes back to what I said earlier on, Andy, which is that we save all the spicy content for the LinkedIn page. Like we don't post that ourselves, we post it there because we know, like, as soon as people find it, they're like, oh my god, this is hilarious,
treasure trove.
Yeah. So
and also, by the way, it's we didn't have an audience before we started. We're not LinkedIn famous by any means, so any growth that you see from us, it's literally from nothing. So if you want to learn more about that, go on the podcast. We've done a whole episode of like actually how to do stuff when you are starting from nothing, like absolutely nothing.
No nepotism here either.
No nepotism. No.
No nepo. We're not nepo babies, and we also had no money, and we put our own money into it.
And no audience. Yeah. So it's if you wanna pick up some stuff, it's there.
Love it.
Yeah.
Good on you both. And I think that's a wonderful way to wrap up this show. Thank you both so much. It's been such a fun chat, as I knew it would be right from the outset. So everyone go check out Blame It On Marketing, because I'm hooked now too. So and thank you so much for both of your time. I'll see you soon.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Social 3.0. I really hope you found this episode useful, and we'll be back next time with some more B2B marketers sharing their wisdom. Feel free to like and subscribe, as it helps the podcast grow and reach more people. But other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.